What is up guys, Andy Forrester Dean Runner here. Welcome back to another video, and today we're taking a look and comparing the Nike Vaporfly 3 to the Saucony Endorphin Elite. So there's a very good reason that this shoe wasn't included in the previous comparison video, and that's because this week in my training I had two very similar workouts that I wanted to pit these two shoes together against. This video has got workout details, statistics, pros and cons, and which one I prefer. So if you're excited for today's video guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, and of course do consider subscribing to the channel for weekly running content. Let's start off with how we tested them. So we'll start off by talking about the Saucony Endorphin Elite. This was the first workout that I did this week and the last one that I'm going to be doing in this shoe. Now it is being boxed up ready for race day. 3 by 10 minutes was on the cards. Both of these workouts this week were 30 minutes worth of work in and around that tempo to 1 hour race pace sort of effort, which is perfect and exactly why I wanted to get these two tested in and around that same effort level, because we're going to have some good stats to compare shortly. So my goal for this workout and for the Vaporfly as well, which we'll talk about shortly, is to really try and hit half marathon pace, which where I run is going to be more like 1 hour race pace effort, because where I run and the stretch of tarmac that I use is kind of like in a bowl. It goes up either side and down, so you can kind of have a bit of a reprieve as you're going down, but then you have to work a bit harder going up. And I always find that I can run a lot faster on race day, so I knew that if I was able to hit around half marathon pace or goal half marathon pace, which was in the 5:30s per mile, then I'd be hitting roughly that right effort. And I did 5:37, 5:36 and 5:35 per mile for this shoe on each 10-minute rep. And then Friday's workout, today when I'm recording this, yesterday when you guys are seeing this, was again 30 minutes worth of work, but broken up slightly differently. So I had a 15-minute long tempo interval to start at, then I had 2 by 6 minutes, and then I had a 3-minute interval. Now in between those I had 15-minute tempo, 1 hour race pace effort with a 2-minute easy jog, and then after that I had 2 by 6 minutes with off a 90-second easy jog, and then I just had a hard 3 minutes at the end. And I should have said in the Saucony Endorphin Elite those 10-minute efforts were off 60 seconds float. So with this one, start off with a 15-minute effort and again hit 5:37 per mile, exactly where I wanted it to be, so that was great. And then I cut down to the 6-minute efforts and I ran a 5:26 per mile pace 6-minute effort on a more favourable, bit more downhill than uphill, and then on the way back 5:28, more uphill than down, so that was great. And then I finished off the 3-minute effort running 5:14 per mile. Now let's talk stats, because this is where it gets interesting. Now obviously ideally it would have been great to have done 3 by 10 minutes for both of them, but these shoes have to work into my training. I don't like to adapt my training for shoe testing. It just so happened that this week I had two workouts that were 30 minutes worth of work in and around similar intensity, so that was really lucky. And actually in the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 weeks ago I did a kind of not a too similar workout, but another cut down workout which is more comparable to what the Vaporfly is. And again I'll pull up some stats for that. That was the first week of my training block, so I was a little bit less fit then, but it'd be great to show you some stats there. So let's dive into these workout stats and show you how they did. So let's start off with the Saucony Endorphin Elite. The run overall was 5.66 miles, 5:40 per mile and 164 beats a minute average heart rates. And the reps were 5:37 per mile. I'll put the kilometre conversions on screen. Average heart rate for that first one was 156 beats a minute with a maximum heart rate of 167, all measured by the Polar OH1 arm strap heart rate monitor. And my cadence for that rep was 173 with an average stride length of 1.66 meters. The next rep was 5:36 per mile, average heart rate of 167, and then 173 maximum. I had a cadence of 174 and a stride length of 1.65, and then the final one was 5:35 per mile, average heart rate of 168 beats a minute, topping out at 176 as a maximum. Cadence was 173 and stride length was 1.67 meters. So what I really want to kind of highlight with that there is that the stride length was very, very similar. The heart rate on the first rep was very low key, very calm, always is when I start off on a workout. But then the next two reps were very, very similar, and it was great to see things kind of steady out there. And just to be able to hit very similar sort of like cadence and stride length just showed how easy I was to be able to click into a rhythm there in that shoe and just glide along. And let's dive into the Vaporfly 3 stats. So the overall run was 6.08 miles, 547 per mile, 165 BPM average. So covered slightly more ground. That's probably because of the recoveries. There was a bit more reps, 4 reps instead of 3, longer recoveries in there. So covered a bit more ground. First rep, 15-minute rep, 537 per mile, 162 average heart rate. So what is that? 6 BPM higher than the first 10-minute rep heart rate in the elite, and topping out at 173 is a max heart rate. Cadence was 172, average stride length 1.66 meters. Rolling into the 6-minute reps, 526 per mile. 166 average with topping out at 172. This is a more favourable downhill way. It's not downhill, but there's a bit more down than up. 175 cadence, 1.7 meters average stride length, and then on the way back, so slightly more up than down, 528 per mile, 170 average heart rate. Excuse me. 177 max, so you can see I worked harder on that one. 174 cadence, and then 1.69 meters stride length. And then finally, to wrap it up, 514 per mile for the 3-minute rep, 169 heart rate average with topping out at 182, so that's really high, and then 175 cadence with a 1.75 meter stride length. So as you can see, not too dissimilar there in the stats. The one standout for me was that first rep. It was a lot higher in the Vaporfly in terms of the heart rate than the Endorphin Elite. I obviously started off and I hit the same paces and I ran the same route. Obviously I had 5 minutes more to do in the Vaporfly, but I don't feel that that constitutes 6 BPM higher. So that's really interesting, but the rest of it was very, very similar, which was good. Again, the other standout was topping out at 182. And what I want to just very quickly throw back to, 2 weeks ago, I did a similar workout in the Endorphin Elite where I did a 15-minute tempo or 1 hour race pace, rep at the start, and then I did a 4-minute effort, and then I did 4 by 90 seconds, and then I did 5 minutes. And in those 90-second reps, I'll just show you this very quickly. I ran 505 per mile, 503, 507, and 504, so quicker, granted than the 3-minute rep, obviously, because it's half the distance. But the key standout here was average heart rates on those are 166, 169, 170, and 171. And all of the maximums only ever went up to 173, 176, 176, 176. It kept me very controlled. And I remember working hard in those reps, but I remember feeling that I was quite within myself. This last 3-minute rep that I did today on the Vaporflies really did feel quite strenuous, and that's reflected in the data there. So although if you look at the big picture, and we have to take this data with a pinch of salt because obviously it's coming off a watch. I'm filming sometimes in this hand, so I might be holding a camera or I might be doing something which might affect certain bits of data. But the heart rate is always being picked up from the Polar OH1. The main standout there for me is my heart rate was a little bit more controlled in the Elite, whereas the Vaporfly, I'm not going to say it was more erratic, but there was a bigger range there. And I feel like I was definitely more efficient in the Elites, and I felt like in both those workouts, everything wasn't within myself, but it was all very controlled. Whereas with the Vaporfly, if I can get my words out, with the Vaporfly, I still felt really good and really controlled, but I did actually feel like I had to work a tiny bit harder to try and match up with what I was doing in the Elite. So now you've heard the workouts and the stats, how do I find them in general just to run in? Pros and cons of this shoe, quickly, let's start with the Vaporfly version 3. I stand by what I said originally with this shoe. It's better than version 2. It's not quite as good as version 1. I just felt with version 2, they tinkered with it. Like the upper, I much prefer the Vapor Weave, if I'm honest with you. I prefer that snugger fit. And I felt like the foam in V2 got a bit sort of like plasticky and a bit not quite as responsive as we found in version 1. Foam in this one is much more like version 1. Love the bounce. The bounce is back and it really does match up in that respect. But the changes in this shoe have just made it a little bit, I'm going to use the buzzword safe, a bit safer a bit more secure than in version 1. I love version 1. It's streamlined, it's slim, it's edgy, it's everything that I want in a racing shoe. And this is still really, really good, but I just do feel like version 1 is better. And the only downside I can say, the only thing I can say in this shoe is it has kind of followed that similar fabric material that we found in version 2. I know it's slightly different, but it's not that plasticky vapor weave. And what I do find when I'm cornering in this shoe, I feel like my heel moves around in the shoe a little bit. So I was doing a couple of U-turns today, not too tight, but just going around and starting my reps again. And I kind of felt like my heel was sliding out of the shoe, not up and away, but I just felt my heel could move left and right in the shoe, and it felt a little bit insecure. I don't get that in the version 1. I get it in the version 2 because I don't feel like the upper fits very well. This is a bit more dialed in, but I still get that heel movement. But genuinely otherwise, I have nothing else to say about the shoe. It is fantastic and I love it. Saucony Endorphin Elite, pros and cons. I have no con for this shoe, if I'm honest with you. I just love it. Running in the shoe, 3 runs now, 2 workouts, 1 long run. All have been stellar. Absolutely cannot bang the drum on this one enough. I know it looks a bit funky, colorway is very bright and stuff, but just the way it fits, feels, talking about heel movement in the Vaporfly 3, you don't get any of that in this shoe. I don't. This is a question actually I got asked, and to be fair, Tim Gross commented on it, said would it be good for him? So me and Tim's a fellow YouTuber, he has narrow feet, I have wider feet. This is definitely roomier. This is much wider in the toe box than it is in the Endorphin Pro 3. If you think about the Endorphin Pro 3, again this question's popped up a few times, how do they compare? The Endorphin Pro 3 has much more of a Vaporfly sort of profile in terms of like fit, and the upper is a bit more snug, which is great. This is roomier in the toe box. So for me with a wide foot, you can see where it's puckered, and you can see as a wide foot runner how I pull it in. So it really does wrap over the top. There's not much gap between the laces there when I'm running. So for narrow-footed people, I can imagine this one to be a little bit too baggy in the shoe. Love to hear from you if you find that. But for a wider foot runner, it's great. And as I said, pros and cons, nothing to say. This shoe delivers, and I feel efficient in it. I'm not going to be confident enough to say that all the workouts I've done have been within myself, as we just mentioned. They weren't within myself, but I felt very controlled. That's what I want in these workouts. I don't want to be going to the well in them. I want to feel like I'm hitting what I need to hit, ticking it off and moving on. And that's exactly what I feel in this. With the Vaporfly, I felt like I stretched a tiny bit to kind of match up. Again, it felt very controlled, I've got to be honest with you, but I did feel like I was working just that smidge harder in the Vaporfly to achieve what I was achieving in this. Stats kind of really do show how similar they are, so a lot of it's going to be up here rather than actual efficiency, but yeah, I've just got to say, for me this one just ticks all the boxes. So after all of that, which one's my favourite? Which one do I prefer? Well, I think you can probably gather that I'm edging towards the Endorphin Elite. I think, as you can see by the stats, they're both very, very similar. And if I could use buzzwords for both of them, I mentioned it on this one, safe. This is a safe shoe. I feel like it's going to get the job done, and it's going to get the job done very, very well. I'm not knocking this shoe at all. I love it. It is fantastic. But we're talking fine margins here. We're talking like a 9.5 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about like a 6 and a 10. They are that close. But what I feel the main difference is, bar the heel slip, I feel like with the Vaporflies, we've got used to the sink and bounce sensation, and we get that propulsion down the road from the foam and the plate, and we bounce along. But when you get fatigued in a Vaporfly, and this one emphasizes it more, I think, when I get fatigued, I feel like I'm working harder to put the same effort in to bounce the same amount of distance down the road, if that makes sense. Like, I feel as you get more fatigued, the bounce gets less because you're not able to put as much oomph in there in your stride as you would. Whereas with this one, because of the speed roll tech and the way that this thing rolls you through the stride, I feel like you don't have to put as much effort into each stride, if that makes sense. So the foam is nice and soft and bouncy. Some people say it's firm. I don't agree, if I'm honest with you. I feel like it's not quite as soft as the Vaporfly, but it is still on the softer end of the spectrum. But you get that roll through that you don't have to put as much effort in, because the shoe, I feel, really does aid you with that part of it. And as you get tired, you still kind of roll through. Like, it's really hard to explain, but I felt on all of those 3x10 minute efforts that as I got through the workout and more tired, it just kept me going, and I just kept getting quicker. And although in the cut down workout, obviously the goal was to get quicker in this, I did feel like I was having to really shift. I didn't feel like that when I was doing the cut down workout in this 2 weeks ago. So fine margins, but I really do feel like the Endorphin Elite edges it. So there we go, that's my winner of this 2 shoes. I just mentioned buzzword for the Vaporfly 3 safe. This one will be edgy. Like, it feels edgy. I love it. I love the sensation. I kind of felt it in the Pro version 1. It was just that shoe that was a bit rogue that I could run fast in. I actually preferred running in that to the Vaporfly version 1, but I was nowhere near as efficient in the Pro 1 as I was the Vaporfly 1. So I went to the Vaporfly 1, just got used to it, and realised how efficient I was and how much I love the Vaporfly 1. But there was something about the Pro version 1 that I just loved. Just that it was firmer, much firmer, but I love the way you roll through the stride. I love what Saucony do with the speed roll tech. They've just got this right. The whole geometry in so many of their shoes is just ideal, and it really works well for me. So yeah, I definitely go with edgy on this one. And yeah, for me, I know it's not going to work for everyone, but it really does tick all the boxes. So there we go. Hopefully that was a pretty decent test, some good stats there, and my thoughts on both these shoes. I'd love to hear from you guys what your thoughts are on the comparison between these two. Do you have both of them? Are you lucky enough to have both of them? If you are, I'd love to hear your thoughts during the year, because they are not a new pair now, they are slightly older, so I'm sure at some point a discount will appear for these shoes. That's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider giving it a like, share it with your friends, and of course subscribe to the channel for weekly running content. I'll see you on the next one. Until then,